Gotta love a location that everything smells like weed. So I'm not the only person who smelled it. I'm Bob London. I have a wife. Somehow that's funny to people. I've been married for 25 years. Thank you. So first to clap, thank you very much. Christina, right? Thank you. I'm an early clapper also. I early clapped for Christy. Got things going, you know? So I'm going to start by telling you a little story about my wife and my love journey. And it's PG, right? So those were the instructions. Keep it PG. Although I heard we're not supposed to curse, but I could swear I heard Miranda say Shih Tzu twice. So that was concerning. Thank you for laughing when you're supposed to laugh or giggle. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the 5 customer love languages, but before I get to that, here's the love journey part of it. And I'm going to give you an anecdote, but it takes a long time, right, to figure this out. These love languages, it's crazy. So my wife works her butt off all week, and so Saturday morning she goes to Pilates. No shout outs for Pilates? Yay! Hashtag Pilates. And she backs out of the driveway, and as she's backing down, out of the the garage at our house, and she could see the house from her perch in her car, and she's looking at the house. Here's what I actually think she sees in her mind's eye. This is what the house looks like to her. Shortly thereafter, I get a call from her from the car on her way to Pilates. I'm just having my coffee, reading the news, and she says, sounds something like this. That's the beginning. Not hello. You know, the house is falling apart. It's a disaster. I mean, the weeds are choking our shrubbery. We've paid all that money, you know, for this nice house, and the shrubbery is getting choked out by the weeds. I'm not kidding you. And, you know, it's a disaster. And I think that I'm surprised the neighbors haven't called the police. Like, it's really bad. And something needs to be done. You know, something needs to be done. Passive voice. Oh, yeah. So can you do some weeding today, please, at least? At least do some weeding, because if she's imagining me sitting and having coffee, which is relaxing, so that's not good. And I go, yeah, of course, sweetie, I'll take a look. What did I do? I said, I'll take a look. That's strategic on my part a little bit, because I'm saying I'll take action. I'm implying that I'm going to do weeding, but it leaves me room to not do it. Because when I go outside, I see something a little more like this. It's not our house. That's just a stolen Google image. But isn't it cute? This is more like what I see. It's like, yeah, I guess I see leaves. Maybe there's some weeds in the picture. I don't know, but it just doesn't look as urgent as what I heard, like the police and the house being condemned and stuff like that. And so here's the problem. The next day, she and I are in her car together, backing out of the parking garage, looking at the same house. This is it's time to come to terms with this. We're both looking at the same view there. And she says, and I'm trapped in the car, did you do anything yesterday with the house? By the way, she is amazing. There's a bit of Christy Falteruso in her, this New Jersey, New York unfiltered. So everything I say, if this is videotaped and she sees it, it's all good. I think. So, did you do anything yesterday? Like, kind of looks the same to me. You know, well, I'm not going to go backwards. I don't want to screw this up. It looks the same to me as it did yesterday when I called you. And you said you were going to do the weeding. Technically, I said I would take a look at it. That's not the right thing to say either. I am learning. I'm trying to learn about her. So she says, never mind, I'll do it when we get home. Uh-oh. Jeez, Liz, it's so hard. It's just really hard for me. to understand all this. And so I know at that point when she says, never mind, I'll do it, she says, then, it's just not working. So very quickly, so let's just fast forward a few weeks. In reality, it was probably a few years it took me to learn this, but a few weeks go by. And I get a very different call from her. She's going to Pilates, backing out of the garage. That call sounds something like this. Same person. Sweetie, what did you do? What did you do to the house? And I go, I don't know, maybe a little something, just a little yard work. I don't know. A little yard work. Why? You are amazing. It looks so great. I'm so proud of our house. I love you. Like, really? I didn't realize that was her love language. It's called acts of service. Who's read the book Love Languages? Whoa, who clapped? All right, man. If I had a different mic and more time, I would do some audience work and go around and pinpoint people with their love languages. I'm not going to do that, thankfully for you. This is a whole different tone of affection, of appreciation on her part. It makes me feel good, and obviously what I did, the stupid weeding, made her feel good. But I also, it was the same when I was single. I bought a house, and there were 4 light bulbs in the dining room, but there was a lot of natural light, so the first light bulb would go out. So what? You can still see. It's just me. Second light bulb would go out. Oh well. Third light bulb would go out. I can still see. Fourth light bulb would go out, and then I smash into something because it's so dark at night. But then with my wife, it's like, when she sees the energy in the light bulb diminishing one time, like a little surge, like, that light bulb needs to be changed. I'm like, why? We can see perfect, like, in customer says, like, the outcome is we need to be able to see. What is the one light bulb? All right, so you get the idea. So she's so excited, she might come out in the yard and join me. That is actually not the best picture of her. That's the only thing I regret now about my slides. So it's a lot of love. That's what love looks like, ladies and gentlemen, to her. Acts of service from the famous book, The Love Languages, by a guy named Gary Chapman, who must be amazing. I mean, he must be amazing. Acts of service. I like the fact that the unfunny parts are funny. The rest of them are words of affirmation, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. I'm not going to tell you what mine are. I'm not going to tell you my wife's other love languages because that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about customer love languages. So I should step back and tell you that the one thing, I don't have a bio or anything or logos about me. You can look me up on LinkedIn, but I've done 2,600 customer discovery calls. So I'm an authority on 2 things in my own eyes. One is what customers really say when you ask about them, and also the process of asking really different disruptive questions and then just shut up and listen to what they have to say. And we're not doing that enough because when I do that with customers, they thank me. These are my clients' customers. So that speaks to the idea of a love language already. But if you kind of go, like if it was I'm going to pick on marketing because that's how I spent most of my career and I know what goes on. So if it was a calendar-driven blog post that I was like, I need a post for today, I'll just take Gary Chapman's love languages and I'll redefine them, just write something next to each one for customers. Well, you can't because physical touch is a hard no. So that process broke down. It broke down quickly. Here are the 5, without further ado, 5 love languages. Be mindful of my time. So imagine your customers saying this. So I really appreciate all the pictures. It says that's my love language. But there's going to be a cheat sheet, a single slide at the end that you can grab. But be mindful of my time, says the customer. Be in sync with me. Be contextual. So some of these need more explanation than others. Be real, which is kind of my co-favorite. Be curious about my business. Those are what turns customers on, to be honest with you, for lack of a better word. I do have one question. Anyone notice something that's missing from the love languages? It's a big, obvious thing, and it might be the thing that you spend most of your time on. Well, sorry, who said results? No. I'm glad you said that. You know what? I take it back. Let's start over. What's your answer? What did you say? Results? Yes, results. That's one. What's another huge, obvious, big thing? Hurry up. I don't have much time, people. Yeah, that's part of it. The biggest thing of all. What do they buy? Oh my God. It should not take that long. Do what you say you're going to do is table stakes, which means that's why they bought. It's the stuff that is obvious and explicit because it's in a licensing agreement somewhere. I can't lecture you about that. That's your job. What is the product supposed to do? What's the value? I'm really sorry. What's your name?
Sarah.
Oh, you're Sarah. I'm Bob. Hi. Boschino? Yeah, cool. The stuff below the line is explicit and obvious. It's written down in a licensing agreement somewhere. The stuff above the line is what customers don't think to ask us, but it's what they live every day. And we don't ask them. That's the crime. It's the criminal part. We're not asking them enough. So it's unspoken, unexpected, and whenever you have that, you have the opportunity to find stuff that your competitors, if you have competitors, some of us say, we don't have competition. No one does what we do. BS. By the way, well, I'll just say BS. I'll leave it at that. So I'm not going to talk about the below-the-line stuff. I'm going to start by talking about being mindful of my time. Again, the implication is that these love languages that you're looking at are different than how vendors view love. I use vendor, so my marketing self wants to say vendor partner. That's funny because marketing people trying to say, let's just put the glossiest face on it that we possibly can. We're calling it a partner. Really? So let me tell you a love language story about being mindful of time. So you have a QBR coming up with a customer. It's tomorrow at 9 a.m. You have prepared no less than 38 slides, which took 4 hours. Your team, 4 people, all vested interest in making this customer successful, showing them love with those slides. And you've got 4 people that have a lot of experience. Your life for the next 24 hours revolves around that meeting's coming up. And you've got an agenda. That agenda is tight. It's tight because you sent it to the customer, they approved it with a tweak. So you've got an agenda. They must be engaged. They approve the agenda. And then that's your love language. The customer is a little different. They're at the same time, finance comes in, some finance person and says, are you available at 9 o'clock tomorrow? Because at 9 a.m., we want to go over your budget. The customer looks at their calendar. It's like, I have a vendor meeting, but I can push that off. It's not a big deal. Is that love, ladies and gentlemen? Is it love? Are you listening? It's not love. Thank you. It's not love. Those are different love languages. So Jeff Brunsback, who knows Jeff? Is Jay Nathan here by any chance? Oh, thanks. Jeff Brunsback wrote an epic LinkedIn post about, and by the way, the QBR is having a horrible year on LinkedIn. If you read LinkedIn, it's like, it's dead, it's dying, it's broken. So maybe where there's smoke, there's fire. Jeff wrote the best blog post I've ever seen about this. And he said, we got to try some different stuff. Why don't we send the slides in advance? What? How can we send the slides in advance without any explanation? Well, the explanation of every bullet point on every slide and dragging the customer through that takes a lot of time, and you have to ask yourself, is that what the customer really needs at that moment? Is every slide equally important? What if you could only show one slide? Jeff takes it further, Jeff Brunsback, by saying, let's just send a one-page pre-read memo. So you guys, some of you are customers of vendors. Wouldn't that be great and such a relief to be able to see, I have this meeting coming up, oh, here's what it's about. That way, when the finance person comes 9 a.m. tomorrow, I can't miss that meeting. I got stuff, this is important. And we'll talk about how to get the important stuff on that list in a minute. So my idea, adding on to Jeff's, because we talked about it in a podcast, was do a 3-minute narrated talk track video of the slides that they can watch. It takes 3 minutes. Who can resist a 3-minute explanation? Hey, customer, just wanted to give you a heads up. Here are the slides attached or linked, but I wanted to give you a visual of like which ones we really want to focus on. And I want to explain a couple things. Just take 3 minutes. And it does two things. It shows the customer that you're being mindful of their time. It's called time shifting. They can look at that video at midnight if they want to. They don't have to show up at the meeting and be blind as to what's about to happen. The other thing it does, it shows a level of creativity and effort that they appreciate, which makes them less likely to be unengaged or to cancel a meeting like that. So Jeff's post is brilliant. I don't have a link to it here, but I think it's really good. So sending slides in advance, including the talk track video. The other thing I do, Donna Weber and I had a debate about this, a little mini friendly debate. I use audio only on my customer calls. Now, I'm talking about discovery. I'm not talking about QBRs where you have to have some visual support because you have reams of stats and things like that, and action items and agendas. But for customer discovery calls, and it's just an example of being mindful of them, including their time. What is the value of them being on video to them? If you ask that question, you go, I don't know, maybe we could just do audio. And I don't want them to be distracted. I want them to feel like they're in a confessional. They're not distracted by my background or whatever, what shirt I'm wearing, this crazy pink shirt, all that. So for each of these slides, I'm going to give you a question that's kind of a key question to get customers to uncover, to talk about. They won't say, hey, Bob, thanks for asking. My love language is X, because they don't know all this. But they'll talk about what's important to them. You can ask them, so while we have a minute, what's coming up for you? What's really important? You have a big meeting coming up, big milestone, offsite, board meeting, anything going on. There's a really good chance you can help them with that. Even if you can't directly help them, it's good to know, because next time you can say, how did it go? Anything we need to know? And on the front end, you could say anything we need to prepare for. Be in sync with me. This is gonna require me to go into my pocket because I have to read another blog post that I couldn't memorize. So be in sync with me can only happen if you have time to ask about them. So that ties into, if you're mindful of their time, you're not giving them back 15 minutes. You're using that 15 minutes to say, open floor. We want to ask you some open-ended questions about what's going on in your world, independent of us and our solution, because we want to get to know you. Jim Smith, he is a director of customer success at Freshworks. It's a very significant, fast-growing company. He says this, and I'm literally going to read it to you. I was on a call the other day. The customer is rattling off a whole bunch of stuff, his word, that they want, what went wrong, this and that, et cetera. It was a lot to consume and pretty challenging to take notes and quantify, all over the map. After listening intently for some time, I asked each of the 3 customers on the call individually to take a step back, and I said, what's the one thing that you need to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months or sooner? And we got 2 very specific outcomes that we could run with, and the whole team agreed with it, and those 2 things became the focus of the conversation. So in real time, they kind of were able to achieve some focus and not be all over the map. That's syncing up with what's important to your customer. The other thing it does is, I guarantee it makes the customer more interested in attending the follow-up meeting, because it's all stuff that the customer agreed was really important to them. We're not doing that enough. So he goes on to say, here's some of the questions. Here's some of what he calls the one thing questions, which is funny because it sounds like thing 1 and thing 2. The one thing questions that we've incorporated into our customer conversations. This is one of them. What's the one thing that absolutely has to be off your whiteboard in the next 90 days? I've asked this question hundreds and hundreds of times. I teach CS teams to do it. I call them the hook and a twist. The hook is the whiteboard. Everyone quickly understands what that means, even if they don't have one literally. Everyone knows what it's for. It's kind of for prioritizing. But the twist is what has to be off your whiteboard in 90 days. If you ask customers what keeps you up at night, they're going to go to sleep. And I don't blame them. Cliche questions deserve cliche answers. When I have these conversations, customers talk 90% of the time. 90%. And it's focused. It's not all over the map 90%. What's the one thing that has to be off your whiteboard in the next 90 days? So I'm quoting Jim now, Jim Smith. What's the one thing that surprised you since we signed the contract? The contract is the hook. Everyone knows what that is. The twist is what surprised you. Half the time it's a positive surprise. Then you get, wow, can we quote you on that? That's pretty cool. Half the time it's not so positive and gives you a chance to learn what's going on. What's the one thing you and your team need to get better at this year? Ooh. But you know what's crazy? People go, you really asked that? Yes. Well, you're implying they don't do everything really well. That's right. Nobody does everything really well. There's always something to improve on. So what they appreciate is that you're asking about them, which is it's a pathway to empathy, right? It's a way of doing empathy. And then he's the last one. What's the one thing your company is counting on you to get done this year? Because your job description is probably 2 pages long, single-spaced. You can't do everything well. What's the one thing your company's counting on you to get done next 6 months or this year? The beauty of that, someone was discussing it with me this week, is you can hear them thinking out loud. They don't maybe know, or they haven't thought about it. It helps them crystallize. What is the one thing? The parenthetical is they're thinking, yeah, what's the one thing that I'm going to get yelled at or fired if it doesn't get done really well? That's just how it goes. That's reality. That's reality. So Jim says he now starts every customer interaction with these questions, and it's been gold because it really helps everyone focus and typically results in clear and concise information and direction. So that's be in sync with me. I would love to take questions, but I'm racing, I really want to finish this. So normally I would say, does this make sense? Do you guys have any questions? Do you think I'm full of shih tzu? Be contextual. One of the things I hear most often, thank you for saying that word, it gives me some additional laughs. So be contextual. Bob, the customer will say, we're not their only customer. Pretty sure we're not. They have reams of data as to how other customers of theirs, meaning my client, how their other customers are solving problems, how their other customers are getting results. We're kind of flying blind. We know what we're doing and what we're seeing. Are we right down the fairway? Are we in the rough? Are we in the sand trap? We have no idea. And I think we vendors can do a better job of providing not just, forgive me, shiny marketing quotes from best practices and customers that are all positive, but like real data, real information that's useful to give the customer context. I can tell you that when they take calls from competitors, it's not because they're switching, because they want context as to what are other ways to solve this problem. What are best practices? What are the other features out there that we don't have? And then they're going to come back and tell you. So this is super important, being contextual. And just a quick example. Before Gainsight Pulse, I started a LinkedIn chat. I'm smiling at Dana and Emily because they're part of this crazy, and actually Miranda and Christy.
I'm a little bit more quiet.
Well, you're quiet. You get plenty of FaceTime. And I said, the title of the chat was, so I'm new to all this. I've only been involved in CS for a couple years from the outside. Anyone interested in getting drinks Tuesday night? Or whatever, grab a bite before the show. And it turned out that, yes, sure, let's do that. And then some people were saying it's going to be cold, dress in layers. Thank you, Miranda. And there was a lot of advice. And then there was stuff about the show and which sessions are you going to. Then it turned into value. This is a LinkedIn chat. Cost nothing. It took 2 seconds to do. And so it turned into a useful resource. Because if you fast forward through if you look at all the thousands, I think there's probably thousands of comments and pictures, and there's some funny pictures of us. And it's become first it became a little social network. Someone said, who likes nut butter? I felt like deleting it, to be honest with you. It's like, what the hell? And I thought, who am I to play God and delete the nut butter thing on the LinkedIn chat? But now it's turned into, hey, how do you guys handle this? How do you guys handle that? What vendor do you use for this or that? So it's become, what's the word that we use for something like that? A customer, louder. Yeah, so if you ever want to get to the point of engaging with Higher Logic Vanilla, which has all the features you need to make it into a real community, with real features that are really useful, you would love to have a proof point like this. So bringing it back to being contextual is, it means you have 3 customers who all have the same challenge. It has nothing to do with your product. It might be something ancillary, but it's really important to them. Ask them if you can invite them all to a group chat on LinkedIn. And then you get to be the hero and you get to listen and watch what they say and learn. It's an amazing way to watch how customers interact without having to go beg and scream and scratch for budget to get an online community. And then when you have success with this little, I call it a micro community, you take it to your superiors, the powers that be, and you say, we really should be looking at higher logic vanilla or some community platform. Why? Because here's what happened with our little Petri dish experiment over here. Look at the engagement we're getting. Look at the value we're adding. We believe there's ROI there. Okay, great. Sounds good. Let's have that conversation. The question, be contextual. Again, what do you and your team need to get better at this year? What's the one thing? Next, be real. It's one of my 2 favorites. First, I was like, be transparent, be authentic. Then I realized, no, those aren't real enough. Be real. We sometimes use PowerPoint as a crutch. I'm going to tell you a quick anecdote, and I have to read it because it came from an email that was very, meant a lot to me. A CSM told me that she had set up a face-to-face meeting with the customer at their office. It was a big meeting. It was very important. They had a lot of PowerPoint slides. I know I'm beating up on PowerPoint and QBRs a lot, sorry. There was a fire alarm. They had to evacuate and go to a restaurant. The CSM decided it does not feel right to open my laptop and have a formal review. That's just life. Like we just can't do it. So they didn't go through the slides. Guess what they did? Whoever answers, you have to say it louder. Louder. Yes, who said conversation? Thank you. 2 people said it. They talked. All of the, like a lot of the vendor scripting and guardrails fell away, the choreography. Next on our agenda, like all that. And it's easy for me to make fun of this because I don't have your job, which is really freaking hard. All the formality and rigidity kind of melted away. And the customer said at the end, I feel like this is really the first time we've ever talked. Just had a conversation about what's important to us. We have an early clapper. Thank you very much. That's an example of being real. It's what happens when you take away the trappings of conformity. Whew. It's a big deal. And here's the question that goes along with it. It's crazy. If a competitor contacted you today, let me ask you this. If a competitor contacted you, how would you react? Scale of 1 to 5. 1, you'd ignore, delete. 5, you'd pretty quickly get back to them. Customers love the authenticity of that question. They respect the fact that you actually acknowledge that you have a competitor out there. And because too many times vendors go, and I see it on the faces of the CS teams I work with. They look at that question, they go, what? Like, well, I'm supposed to ask that? Please tell me I don't have to ask that question. It's okay. They say, like, we're not supposed to talk about competition. We don't need to waste time on that. We don't want to give them any oxygen. Wrong. It's not about competition. It's a way to it's a wedge to the conversation to open it up, to get the customer to talk about how they feel about you and the relationship and what's missing and what's going well and stuff like that. If they say 5, I'd get back to that competitor pretty quickly. Then you have a chance to say, I really appreciate you being so candid. Can I ask what might trigger you to look at them or talk to them? Well, I mean, we try to be kind and we talk to everybody. We just want to be respectful. Or we never know what we're missing and what might be out there. It goes back to being contextual. We might pick up a tip, a trick, a feature. If they say 1, that doesn't mean you're out of the woods because they wouldn't talk to a competitor. They might say, look, we've got an ERP implementation going on. We're too busy. I would say in a year, though, we probably are going to field calls from competitors, and we've discussed below the line. We've discussed the things that are going on that we need to work on. Right. So that's all very helpful. Last one, and I love the word curiosity, so I used it here. Be curious about my company. I'm going to go a little bit over here, and I apologize to whoever's going to yell at me in a few minutes. Your CS team has to have a little understanding of what's going on in the business world The example is one of my clients is a software company that offers a customer support platform. So it's used by customer support reps for B2C e-commerce companies. Those are the customers. And I was interviewing that customer, my client's customer, and I said, I asked him this question. Let me ask you this. If I could sneak into your board meeting, what's the number one thing, again, the one thing, or priority or challenge that they're focused on this year, right now, whatever you want to say, next 6 months? Growth. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Yeah, I mean, you might be aware, Bob, that Apple changed their rules around privacy and tracking. Who knew that? Good. And that has really reduced the impact of our campaigns, our customer acquisition campaigns. Less efficient, we have to spend more. It's driving us crazy. And it's impinging on our growth and our profitability. Wow, okay, that's what's going on. That's what's going on. Next question, sir. Do you guys have plans to address it? Yes, that's why we're going into retail. Retail, whoa, that has implications for my client. A number of implications that I don't have time to go into. Very important. But the point is, when I spoke to the CS team and played these clips, recordings of that call, before I played the Apple clip about privacy and tracking, I said, so, because all their customers are e-commerce, so I assumed they knew. So you know what the number, anybody guess what's the thing he said was in the, about growth? No one knew. I gave them 10 clues, they couldn't figure it out. And my point to them was, you need to have this customer come in and do a customer reality brown bag. Teach the CS team what's going on in the real world outside of their particular product that's having a heavy impact on a lot of their customer base. So I apologize for going over time. I promised you one page. If you want to take a snapshot, the next slide has a QR code that has a little more polished version of this. Whoa. Let me get out of the way. It's a lot of... Well, thank you. Christy did tell me that. Caused me a lot of stress, but it was worth it. Thank you very much. So guys, I want to say I love customer success. You guys are amazing. You've drawn me in. Thank you, Jay, for starting the whole thing 3 years ago for me. So thank you very much for your time.